Our Law and Justice segment tonight. A Texas county sheriff is refusing to enforce federal immigration laws, even if that means allowing an alleged child sex offender to walk the streets. Travis County Sheriff Sally Hernandez has adopted an anti-cooperation policy prohibiting her department from honoring nearly all ICE detainer requests. One of those requests was for Hugo Javier Gallardo Gonzalez, who has been accused of repeatedly sexually abusing a child. Instead of allowing him to be detained by ICE, the sheriff's office is set to release him. Awful. With me now, President and Executive Director of Americans in Support of Law Enforcement, Scott Erickson. Scott, thanks for being here.
Hey, Liz, good to be with you.
All right, Scott, before we get into the correlation between sanctuary city policies and crime rates here, give our viewers just a brief overview of what it actually means to be a sanctuary city. My understanding, it restricts law enforcement from cooperating with federal immigration officials.
Yeah, essentially that's what it does. And it runs the gamut. There are over 270 jurisdictions in America where some sort of limitation on cooperation between local law enforcement and federal immigration authorities exists. Some have a very restrictive policy, like in the Bay Area in California. Others have a less restrictive policy. I can give you kind of a little background of my own experiences. I spent 19 years as a police officer in the Bay Area. And when I started my career, we had a much more permissive policy with respect to our cooperation with ICE. In fact, when we would arrest somebody who would self-admit to being in the country illegally, we would actually proactively fax ICE information on the individual so they could decide whether they wanted to come take custody of that person. Over the course of 19 years, that changed dramatically to the point now, when I left the police force, that absolutely you cannot cooperate, you cannot interact, you can't contact ICE. And it's obviously, in my opinion, to the detriment of public safety.
Right. I mean, what results from policies like that is offenders, convicted, arrested individuals who are not citizens of our country, who are here illegally, instead of being deported after they've committed their crimes, they're just released back onto our streets because those law enforcement individuals, such as yourself, weren't allowed to talk to the federal immigration authorities who would then deport these individuals. That's what we saw down in Texas. What I said in the introduction in Travis County, Sheriff Sally Hernandez, she just implemented a new policy of non-cooperation. Scott, tell us what happened there.
Yeah, you pretty much encapsulated that situation. And this individual who was arrested and charged and alleged to have systematically sexually abused his girlfriend's young child beginning in 2014 over the course of a year, federal immigration authorities sent a detainer request to the Travis County Sheriff's Office, which was denied. And now that individual has been able to make bail. And as far as I understand, he was going to get fitted with a GPS ankle bracelet, but is subsequently been released pending charges. And that's the absurdity of this. You'll hear a lot of people on the left say, well, we don't believe in cooperating with we believe in sanctuary cities. We believe in providing sanctuary to undocumented immigrants, but we also agree that criminals should be deported. Yet when a criminal, somebody accused of something as heinous as repeat sexual abuse on a minor, on a child, is in the system, they throw their hands up and they do everything they can to stop cooperation with federal immigration authorities. So they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth on this one.
Right.
And again, it's not just, I mean, it's clearly to the detriment of public safety. It's absurd.
Right, and a GPS tracker on your ankle is not going to prevent you from committing child abuse if that's what's on your mind. It's not a video camera or a private bodyguard next to you preventing you from committing this crime. It just tells you the literal geographical whereabouts of where you're headed. That's it. Then this goes to the argument, I think, that critics say that sanctuary cities don't have any impact on the crime rates in that particular city. And Scott, that's just not true.
No, I mean, it's absurd. In 2014, ICE did what they called a declined detainer report. And over the course of 8 months, they monitored the number of detainer requests that were declined by local jurisdictions, so-called sanctuary jurisdictions. They found that during that period of time, over 8,000 individuals were released from local custody based on declined detainer reports. Of that subgroup of people, 8,000 people, about 2,000 subsequently reoffended, being arrested a total of over 4,000 times and accumulating over 7,000 additional charges. Now, I don't have to tell you that 7,000 additional crimes that didn't have to occur in the United States, but they did occur because of these absurd and prohibitive sanctuary city policies like the one we see in Travis County right now.
Right, and I think I just want to make this note again just to make sure that we're all comprehending this. This study, this 8-month study done by ICE, this was just on declined detainer requests. This is exactly what sanctuary city policy does to our cities. And it does more. I want to show this short video, Scott, because I think that there's an important point to be made by this too.
Again, I say sanctuary cities are racist. All the jobs are going to illegals and to certain denominations. That is wrong. You're not going to be allowed to get away with it. Your time is going to be up. You want us to feel for your families, but you don't feel for our families. Again, the black community has literally been destroyed by racist, illegal immigration, and we're not going to have it. When my people do a crime, we get 3 strikes. Your people do a crime, they get amnesty, they get benefits, and they're not paying taxes. Okay?
I mean, Scott, I want to repeat what she said in her last sentence. She's talking about, the criminal aliens who have committed crimes. She said, when my people do a crime, they get 3 strikes. When your people do a crime, they get amnesty, they get benefits, and they're not paying taxes. And it's a whole separate issue, I think, when we're talking about the welfare state when it comes to illegal immigration here. But a point that can be made that can tie it into what we're talking about is if that's true, if these illegal immigrants who are committing crimes are being allowed to stay and are subsequently taking jobs away from citizens, especially low-paying jobs, poverty leads to higher crime too. Poverty leads to getting involved in drugs, in gangs, in violence. I mean, that is an indirect effect that has just as big of an impact on our cities.
Sure. I mean, there's a whole litany of unintended consequences that result from these sanctuary city policies. And like the lady in your video said, illegal immigration depresses wages. And it also pushes people out of the workforce at that particular level where other illegal immigrants are operating in. So there are all sorts of unintended consequences, not the least of which, of course, are public safety considerations. But again, and here's what I don't understand. People on the left are almost supporting and promoting these sanctuary city policies in a dogmatic way. And it's not just bad policy, but it's clearly bad politics as well. And the reason I say that is because we had a study came out from Harvard University that showed that 80% of Americans strongly support requiring local law enforcement to cooperate with federal immigration authorities when somebody is arrested in their jurisdiction, an illegal immigrant is arrested in their jurisdiction. 80%. The American public supports the end of sanctuary cities. And so I don't understand if they're doing this for political purposes, it's not a very effective strategy.
No, I say this all the time. I say it all the time. I don't understand why it's a partisan issue. Who doesn't want to deport criminal aliens? There's a clear difference between people who've committed crimes and those who, except for the crime of entering our country illegally, otherwise have been productive people in our nation who have not committed crimes. Scott, we're out of time. Thanks for being here. All right, guys, our final tipping point of the night. Forgive me if I don't believe the outrage at the Obamacare town halls. I don't believe it's anything other than paid political outrage peddlers. We'll be right back with more on that.